Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Xaereth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. We're doing 5v5 with no ships in Championship 5, Episode 2, and we're in the semifinals, so we did win our last match, so that's exciting. And today is a little bit special because I am going to be facing a guy in a rematch that I faced toward the end of Season 3, so last time we were in 5v5. And you can see here, this is my current match card. This is my old one that I still had the screenshot of. And my opponent's name is Tugg Speedman. And a rematch with Tugg Speedman can only mean one thing.
Only this time, it's different. Who left the fridge open? Tugg Speedman. Scorcher 6. Global meltdown. Here we go again.
Now, all of my GAC streaming buddies who were making fun of me for swimming around in the corpses of Phoenix and Rogue One from my last episode will have nothing to complain about in this match. My opponent had a really strong defense and a really strong resume to be able to take me down, and I did not go into this match complacently. I actually did quite a bit of research and a lot of prep for this particular match, just because I knew my opponent was good and I did not want to underestimate him. I hold a slight advantage in Zetas and gear. I have 4 more gear 13 than them and about 10 more gear 12, and that does come into play a little bit, I think. And in terms of mods, we have pretty similar mods. I do have a slight advantage there as well, and my opponent does have me completely destroyed in relics. The 15 tier 7 relics versus my 8, so that's a pretty big difference. Now, I want to take a few minutes to talk about my defensive placements because I did a lot of things that were pretty different from what I normally do. I anticipated that my opponent was going to be putting Darth Revan and General Skywalker on defense. I was pretty sure they were going to do that. In addition, my opponent had a history of putting General Grievous down with a Relic 7 Watt inside as well, and I was happy to see that they did not do that. However, I was correct that they were going to put down a really strong defense, a fully maxed Relic and really fast Darth Revan squad, fully maxed and relicked General Skywalker squad, except for Skywalker himself is only Relic 6. Now, at first glance, you might think that this means that I could just put my own Darth Revan team on defense and my opponent would probably not be able to beat me, but check this out. While I was scouting his Grand Arena history, I saw that my opponent had taken down an enemy Darth Revan team with his own Jedi Revan. Now, this isn't necessarily too uncommon at the really high levels. I don't have that counter up and running, but it is a pretty advanced one and it is very reliable once you have it down. The other factor to consider here is the fact that my opponent had won a series of pretty resounding victories on defense with his own Darth Revan in the mirror match, and that actually includes my own. I lost with my faster Darth Revan and Batstilla. Both of them were faster. In the last round that we had, my opponent had really strong mods, but I was faster, and I still lost, and so all these things combined to make me think I don't want to use my Darth Revan on defense, but I need to protect him as much as I can and kind of like draw out all of the potential counters and hopefully get my opponent stuck in the back somewhere. And so here's what I did on defense. The goal was to try to take that Jedi Revan team out of the equation as fast as possible, and so I knew that my opponent had in the past used Jedi Revan to counter a General Grievous squad with Watt, so that's exactly the squad that I put there in the front. And just to make the pot a little bit sweeter, I knew that my opponent could potentially use Night Sisters to counter my General Grievous, so I put my Geonosian squad up front, hoping that they would use that squad. In addition, I know that the soft counter for General Grievous is Traya with Thrawn and sometimes Palpatine lead, and so I really wanted to take that option away as well, or at least give a more enticing target. So I put my Kira Nest team on the bottom there just to emphasize, hey, I have a Relic 7 Nest. You might really struggle to deal with that squad if you don't use Traya here, and so they'll want to use their Traya on Nest, therefore forcing them to use Jedi Revan on General Grievous, and once they clear that front top zone there, hopefully they won't have a squad that's going to be able to counter my Darth Revan. Now let's move on to offense. A lot of you people have told me that putting General Skywalker is a bad idea on defense, but take a look at my opponent's mods here.
I don't believe you people.
Huh? What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
Huh?
Now, all of my opponent's mods that could have protection on them did have protection, including the triangle, and they were all defense primary. Keep in mind when you see the final stats here that this is only Relic 6 on Skywalker, so he's even going to be stronger once he hits Relic 7. And, you know, it's a pretty decent speed, especially because the arrow is a protection arrow. And look at that armor, 68%. That is crazy. It is really high, especially when coupled with 130k protection. And, you know, it's just nuts. But I needed to counter this team with something that was not just the mirror match, because if I did the mirror match, which I did have available, then I wouldn't really have a great team to be able to counter my opponent's really strong Darth Revan team. And so, you know, I jumped in with my Commander Luke. I am consistently beating the General Skywalker teams with my Relic 7, Han, and Chewie. You know, Luke is only Relic 3, and 3PO's Relic 1 or 2. Old Ben is only Gear 12. But, you know, this is consistent in Arena. I have, ever since I put the second Zeta on Old Ben, I have not lost this match. And so I figured, you know, it's kind of a funky mod setup, but it's not necessarily going to get my opponent anywhere. Now, by now, easily, I've dropped my opponent's General Skywalker. The fact that I can taunt right now with Old Ben is crazy. Usually, I have to wait until almost the end of the topple for General Skywalker to be able to put that taunt on. So, you know, I did put the taunt on just kind of out of habit, but I think maybe that was a mistake. You can see that Old Ben is already pretty low health, and, you know, we want him to be available to die once Skywalker stands up and starts hitting me. So he died before Skywalker stood up. That has never happened to me before. And, you know, you look at my health on Luke and on Han, that's also never happened before. In fact, I don't think I've ever had a topple that I've only killed one clone at before. So, you know, this mod set is a very impressive one, and it's only going to get better at Relic 7. I'm considering changing my whole modding strategy for this team as well. So, did manage to take out Rex, which is what you want to do next. You got to kill 5s first. Once you get through 5s, then you want to kill Rex. And then after that, I've basically just been killing whichever of Echo and Arc had the lowest health, just because both of them are pretty equal in terms of value in my eyes. And anyways, skip forward just a little bit in the video, and you know, I've killed the clone, and Skywalker just went totally ham and killed my whole team. And that really hasn't happened to me for I don't know, probably a month. I don't think I've lost that particular matchup for a month. I'm very impressed by my opponent's modding on General Skywalker. And, that obviously did not go as planned. I decided to sit on it and just, take out the other teams just to see what kind of counters I would need to have. And so I jumped in with my Jedi Revan team using Bastila lead. And my opponent, instead of putting Watt here, which makes this team crazy, crazy hard, they put Newt at Gear 12. And Newt does a couple good things, but he's not nearly as potent as Watt. For instance, if you're fighting against a Watt General Grievous team, you have to take out Watt first. And that means that you get, a ton of hits in on Watt, while B2 is just sitting there taking hits on you. Every time you hit, he's gaining turn meter, and he's doing his AoE, and he's just destroying you. And so, the fact that I don't have to target Watt first means that I can immediately just take out B2, which I did here. And now we're just biding our time, waiting for Jedi Revan to cycle back in with his abilities to be able to mark Grievous, so we can just take him out and then just basically slaughter the rest of the hapless separatists. Very similar to Revenge of the Sith, in fact. Once you take out Grievous, then the rest of their protection is just gone, and you can just send Jedi Anakin in, which is where the parallel fails. But anyways, where we did manage to kill Magna Guard, that isn't necessarily what we want to do. We want to avoid all these character deaths, and we want to just be able to mark Grievous before Jedi Revan gets killed, so then he doesn't get disrupted on his recharge of trying to get his mark off. Now, a couple things to point out here. First off, I did kill Newt, and that's a bad thing, honestly, because it gives General Grievous another turn, and he can do his AoE, and that's not great. Another thing, always pay the extortion. It can really ruin you later down the line if you don't pay extortion right away. And then another thing to point out is Hermit Yoda put the second mark, or rather the second Jedi's training, onto Jolee. Now, I would actually argue that in a lot of cases you want to put the Jedi training on Jolee to start with. Not only does it make Jolee a little bit more resilient, it also starts the chain of assists and basic attacks that Jolee is going to eventually need to have up to be able to revive his team over and over again if you have to face like a Watt team or a BB-8 team that is giving Grievous a ton of turns. This time I didn't really need it, but Jolee having Master's training is really important. So 58 banners against that team, pretty good, happy enough with it. I decided I wasn't ready to try the General Skywalker team again, just because I knew that I needed to use my own General Skywalker to face their Darth Revan. The whole reason I put my Darth Revan on defense this time was because I didn't trust it against my opponent's Darth Revan, and I knew that my General Skywalker was going to be automatic here, even though he is relatively inefficient on offense. You're never going to get a really high banner total with them. He is fairly automatic against any Darth Revan teams, and that's what I needed. I needed certainty here, and I needed to cause uncertainty in my opponent, and make them wonder what exactly they stumbled into. So, normally I really like General Skywalker on defense because even though he's inefficient on offense, he's also really, really efficient on defense. Even if he gets one shot like everyone says he's going to be, which he does fairly often, I'll admit, he's still going to take a ton of banners off of your opponents. And, I just kind of prefer to let my opponents deal with his inherent inefficiency. So that being said, I needed a sure thing here because I thought maybe it would happen that I would get taken out by their General Skywalker. I had seen their mods beforehand, and they were crazy enough that I thought maybe my Commander Luke would lose, which they did. So, at this point I was patting myself on the back pretty hard, just because I wanted to make sure that I had an automatic thing, one shot against their Darth Revan team. And it gets a little scary here. 2 of my clones are dead, so this isn't going to be an efficient win. 51 banners though, that's on the correct side of 50, I guess. I had already dropped 20 banners against my opponent's General Skywalker. Dropping another 9, I guess, didn't necessarily feel like a huge loss, especially because that is a really strong Darth Revan team. Now, this Dooku team had me a little bit worried. I wasn't sure. Initially, I wanted to use Traya on it, and I decided I wanted to actually save Traya for later. And, after looking at the squads for a little bit, I decided I thought that probably my Jedi Training Ray team would be able to beat it. I've been putting relics on Jedi Training Ray and her droids a little bit, or rather I put gear on them and got them to gear 13, and so that does add just a little bit. It adds speed and resilience, and this team is really good at control, and that's exactly what you need against a Dooku squad with all these different things. There are 2 different versions of days. There are a bunch of different versions of immunity to damage, and there's a lot going on. Tons of damage. This is a really creative and cool squad, honestly. And first you want to take out Dooku if you can. I barely managed to fail against him, but eventually R2 backed me up and he roasted Dooku to an ignominious death, which is wonderful. And, now we have Droideka, who got off an early big shot on poor old Finn there, and we're really hoping that Finn is going to be able to pull through, but in the end he's really not that fast. I need to get him modded a little bit better, and I need to get him some gear. He's probably going to be needed for the next event anyways. Anyways, we're just kind of biding our time for a little bit. Everyone was hidden or had damage immunity, and so I couldn't really do anything, just hit Nest. Now, it's a really important thing against Nest to try to get days off on her early on, just because she isn't going to be able to counterattack then, so it doesn't matter how many times you hit her, she's just going to hang out there. Eventually Jango was able to start doing damage, or rather take damage, and he goes down pretty quick. He does do a lot of damage though before that. Droideka, once he came out of stealth, I was able to take out fairly quick as well. And now we're going to fast forward just a little bit against Nest here, because even though we have 3 minutes to take her out, which is more than enough time, it does just take a while to be able to get her. You want to be able to stun her as quick as you can. That means that BB-8 is going to use Tenacity down, on his basic, and then you're just using basic attacks on her. And basic attacks, because basic attacks, you wait for her turn to reset, and once she does reset, then you get one of your damage dealers to do a big hit on her. Now, I did want to put days on her one more time. I used my mind trick, and now we're just using basics again. And in a minute, we're going to freeze frame. Look at her turn meter. She's about to get a turn, and once she gets a turn, she'll come out of stealth. And here's the freeze frame. Now, you see that R2 could get a hit on her, and, he could do a little damage, but we don't want that. He's not a heavy hitter. We want to do more damage, so we're going to pass with him and use smoke instead. And then Rey is able to get a big hit in, and, we weren't quite able to finish her off. Now we want to stun her again so that she's not going to be able to heal herself or cause further damage to our banners. Now, the healing part is only relevant against other teams if you're taking Nest out with other teams, because Jedi Training Rey does have the locked damage, or rather healing immunity debuff, so not really too bad. 57 banners is fine, and we can move on to the next zone.
I killed one, Rick. The thing I love most in the world.
A hooker. All right, you killed a hooker.
No, a panda.
I killed a panda. Amanda? Come on, dude. I mean, that's probably not even a real name.
No, a panda.
Panda?
A sweet, cuddly, vicious little panda.
It's probably a little bit of a stretch to call a Wampa a panda, but I needed to get that clip in there somehow. So we did manage to clear that zone, and in the back here we have a pretty weak Emperor Palpatine team and a Kira timeout team, which is great news. That means that we can use some of our B-level teams to be able to clear them. They're not necessarily weak teams, but we can probably spare something like Padme to be able to clear this General Skywalker team, because we still have a Traya team in reserve, and my opponent did have a tendency to put Old Republic on defense, and because this is an 8-squad defense, I thought that there was a pretty decent shot that my opponent had put their Old Republic in the back, so decided to take out this General Skywalker. He is such a pain alone, even. He's a squad on his own. It's nice to have the supporting clones gone, because otherwise I don't know if I have a team that would be able to take him out, unless it was maybe a Padme team that got lucky. But just alone, he will completely destroy your entire team. Now, I had considered putting my Emperor Palpatine team on offense in this match, just in case this happened, and then when I was placing defenses, I just kind of forgot. But that counter is really strong against a lone General Skywalker. What it is, you take Palpatine lead, and then you have Thrawn and Shore Trooper and Probe Droid. then, eventually Palpatine just uses his health boost, which then it takes down just a little bit of health on Probe Droid, and then Probe Droid is able to explode on Skywalker. Now, using my Padme team there may seem a little bit foolish, but I needed a sure thing, and I wasn't sure that Traya was going to cut it there, frankly. I would have liked to do that, but as it stood, the back zone did have a Karth team, and it had a fairly weak Bounty Hunter team. It was kind of a strange one, actually. So I did have the right teams to be able to manage the back, even though it's a relatively strong-ish back line for how strong the front line was. I felt pretty confident that I'd be able to get through it. So first we want to use our Imperial troopers to take out Emperor Palpatine. That's twice in 2 matches now, which is kind of strange because I don't know if I've done it at all since championships became a thing, but people are starting to put Palpatine on defense apparently, or maybe just like a couple randoms, but anyways, there's really no challenge here. 60 banners. We want to be efficient and get as many banners as we can. And now we can move on to the next squad. Now I will point out that you need Stark to be faster than Vader, so pay attention to your speeds, because if Vader goes first there, then those Imperial troopers are completely screwed. Now I did outspeed my opponent's Vader by a huge amount, but that is something you need to intentionally check every time. Now, this match is actually a little bit more complex than you might normally think. This Bosk team isn't super strong, but it does have a couple layers of redundancy that make it really difficult to plan against. Baze there has his pre-taunt up, and, of course, and that's not necessarily an issue, except you need to, at all costs, not let Bosk taunt. If he's going to taunt, then you can really you're gonna have a bad day, because he is extremely resilient. All of the characters surrounding him have huge AoEs that do a ton of debuffs and are going to just heal him forever, and he has a decent number of relics on him as well. So if you can prevent him from taunting and get the 2-turn stun off with Kylo Ren, then he's not going to be able to dispel that debuff, and therefore he's not going to be able to taunt, and then you can take out all of the squishy inside of the squad. Otherwise, he's just going to taunt the whole time, and maybe you take him down, or maybe Boba and his executes and Zam's grenades are going to take you down. Either way, it gets really ugly really fast. After you're able to neutralize Bosk, though, from being able to taunt, then you really want to target. You basically want to target everyone. I didn't really care about Baze at all. I wanted to take out Zam as quick as I could. The one bounty hunter that I regret not having ever geared is Zam, and just because she's almost as good at Dengar at healing the bounty hunter squad. And that's huge. Now, one awesome thing about having a really tanky Bosk here at the end is that it gives you the opportunity to heal up your health and protection with First Order before you take out Dengar. So 60 banners is great. It's a great result. We want to keep being efficient, and at this point I needed to stop attacking because I was about to shoot my podcast, and so my opponent then started attacking, and you can see there they took out my Geonosian squad, then they took out my Grievous squad, and my Nest squad is also gone. And I'll relieve some of your curiosity, or at least I would be curious in your place. After talking to my opponent, they did use Traya on Nest, so that piece of bait did work. They couldn't use Traya on my General Grievous squad, or they didn't really want to use it. They used Night Sisters on my Geonosians, and then they did use Jedi Revan on Grievous, so that was great. Really happy about that. They did one-shot all those teams, so that wasn't necessarily perfect, but that meant that my opponent was going to need to try to use Padme against my Darth Revan team, and I'm actually going to let you guys be in suspense a little bit as to what the results were on all of these other attacks. I will show you my defenses in a little bit, but suffice it to say that I did have a small amount of wiggle room to be able to take out these last 2 squads. I did have a couple options available to me. I had my Traya team, which was going to beat one of these squads easily, And I did have, I had Wampa and a bunch of tanks that I could have used to take out that timeout team with Kira. And I had Phoenix. And Phoenix do okay against Old Republic. They do really well, actually, if you have the right gear and the right mods. And, you know, I have all my Zetas and everything. You'll note that I did leave Ezra out. Ezra's not as good in this matchup. He's a really good plug-and-play character. He doesn't really fit in with Phoenix that well. The other 5 work better together. So the goal here, the first move I made, and you could see, I used Sabine to put Armor Shred on Zalbar right away. And, you know, the reason for that is he has an obscene amount of armor and a lot of protection and health, and you need to be able to chew through that eventually. So getting Armor Shred on him is of paramount importance. Next, you saw that I used Hera to call Zeb for days on Zalbar, and my opponent doesn't have his Zalbar modded for tenacity, so it wasn't going to be very hard to get through anyways, but my Zeb is at 125 or so potency anyways, so even with a Zalbar with a huge amount of tenacity, he's going to be able to take days, apply days. So you put days on Zalbar, and once he gets retribution up and he starts calling mission to assist, it gets really nasty. But if he has retribution up and he has days, then he's not going to be able to days anyways. So now we're just trying to you know, pick off different characters, and you know, I did take out Karth because he's the easiest to kill. I know a lot of people like to target mission, and I get that. You know, I like her to die too, you know, as well as any man, but Karth is just the low-hanging fruit. Like, he's easy to take out. I'd honestly rather take out Canderous first. You know, that can be he can be really destructive. You know, and now you see Canderous did a big AoE. I did all sorts of attacks on him that caused him to drop below protection, and then Zalbar taunted, he got retribution, so immediately I had Hera call another assist for Zeb, and Zeb dazed him, so now we can hit him as much as we want, and he's not going to be able to do anything to us. You know, and then Mission's going to stay out of it as well. So, you know, really this match is all about using the right tactics. You know, it's not a bludgeon. You really can't just use brute force here or you're going to lose. And it doesn't always work that well. Generally it does, though. I've had pretty good success with it in general. You know, one thing that I'll point out is I've been using Sabine's grenades quite a bit, and you see that T3 had stagger. You want to be able to, you know, kind of push those stagger buttons quite a bit and, you know, deny your opponents as many turns as you can. One other thing I want to point out is my opponent is using T3 here as the 5th. I would kind of advise against that. T3 doesn't have very much in common with the rest of these Old Republic. He's a great character in the right slot. He's not necessarily that helpful. I don't like Juhani necessarily, but I like her in that slot quite a bit more than I like T3. So, you know, just as a bit of advice, in general, I don't like Old Republic on defense anyways. They just don't really stop that much, including Phoenix.
We're supposed to be a unit!
Suck my unit.
So, we got 59 banners using Phoenix, and I know that my buddy Solo is probably going to laugh derisively and make some kind of small-minded comment about Phoenix and how I wasted Zetas on them. And all I say is, you know, at least I got the win here. You know, I was able to take out that squad, and Phoenix are a great backup team. Like, they're not necessarily going to beat the world, but they can definitely do some things pretty well. Some things, like limited things. Mostly non-special things, really. But, you know, the things that they can do, they do pretty well. I would love for them to get a boost at some point. You know, or I'd love to see someone put Relic 7 on them and rule the world. I doubt that that's actually happening, though. So, this last mission, I knew that Traya had it on lockdown easy enough. This squad doesn't do any damage at all, except for maybe young Han Solo if you give him enough turns. But not against a Traya squad. Like, not ever. So we're gonna actually go a little bit faster here, just speed it up, because we already know the eventual outcome, or at least most likely outcome. I did take Sith, Assassin, and Darth Maul here. I'm just working on the feet to be able to kill characters with double-bladed lightsabers. So you'll see I do a couple weird moves with my squads just to keep certain characters alive longer so that my double blades can kill them, take care of them. First you want to put Isolate on L3, and once she is isolated, then you need to take out Vander Chewbacca. He's really the key to the whole timeout team. And once he's gone, then you can annihilate L3, which I did, and now we're just hanging out, trying to get kills with the double blades, as I said. And this isn't a hard match. It's fairly easy. It's a luxury to be able to use Traya on this squad. I could have used any number of other squads to be able to take it out, but as it stands, it is nice too, though, to have your handheld to be able to, I wanted to use my double blades to be able to get kills, and that's what I was able to do. Traya was able to hold their hands while I did it. So 58 banners is just fine for the amount that I needed, and my opponent did full clear me, but I was able to transcend their score by nearly 40, not quite.
Survive!
All right, well, I did manage to get the win here against a really strong opponent, and you can see they had a relatively low score there. And honestly, I'll show you guys my defenses here. So on the bottom front, I did get just double tapped, one shot on both of these squads, which is kind of expected. And on the top, as we spoke about before, they used their Jedi Revan team on General Grievous, so he did his job. Geonosians got taken out by Night Sisters, they did their job. On the bottom back zone, both of these teams also got taken out, but my opponent didn't get great banners against them. I was starting to bleed him on banners. And then finally, my opponent did use Padme on Jedi Revan. He lost with Padme and took him out with something else, and then my Emperor Palpatine team also randomly got an extra win, so it gave me a little extra buffer. So was able to win by 37. And honestly, I'm proud of myself for my planning there. It was pretty tricky to figure out, but we managed it. Managed to get up to 5 double-bladed kills, so only 7 to go there, and we did get the win. So undefeated for the first 2 matches. We're going into the finals against another person who I've matched up against before, and we'll see how that goes. But this is stretched on long enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember that in all things, Xaereth prevails.